Welcome everybody to another edition of Behind the Scenes Live. That's BTS Live for short, episode number 21. And I keep saying I can't believe we're at episode 21, but we are. All the trials and tribulations aside, we are here with you. We're actually starting close to on time, which is a miracle. But anyways, I think we got all the technical bugs worked out. But joining me as always, my partner, Mark Rogers. Hey Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Doing great. Wrapping up tax season, both for myself a couple of days ago and then doing my son's today and working out some issues with him that affect my taxes and him turning 18 and then 19 affecting me like I didn't anticipate. So tax season, yay.
Oh, I could imagine, you know, how that is. In fact, I just went down to the post office today and mailed my forms in, and it was funny because I was expecting to have to pay, but I got a nice surprise. I was procrastinating all the way through, so I actually finished up my taxes last night, and I come to find out that I had some extra deductions, and I was actually getting money back. So good on me, I guess, you know. So at least I got some of my estimated taxes already planned. So anyways,
yeah, the system works
fun,
us
right?
enough. We need to work the system a little bit.
Oh, exactly right. And it's a nice day today too. So it's mid-70s. I think we're breaking out of the winter. We talk about the weather all the time. So so that's a good thing too. Anyways, on today's show, we started this discussion last week about the Mark and Macy show, and this is kind of part two of that discussion. Mark has created a show, and we call it the Mark and Macy show. It's a sports talk show on Blab, and you know, we talk a lot about the 90-10 rule, right? Where 90% of your work is preparation and planning and setting everything up, and especially if you're creating a new show, if you have a co-host, getting guests, all the preparation, a lot of work goes into it, much more work than you actually see on the screen, and then 10% is what you actually see. So, you know, we really want to continue this discussion, and kind of Mark's going to kind of tell his story, or continue to tell his story about how what he came up with the idea, how he created it, you know, some of the things with co-host, chemistry. We've talked a lot about these different things, Mark, about all the work that has to go into a show before you actually hit the air. And I'm going to kind of hand it over to you to kind of continue that discussion. But again, we're kind of positioning this as for people out there that may have the same idea and, you know, may be thinking it's a daunting task. And I think with the right procedure and the thought process and work, you can certainly launch and create a successful show.
Yeah, so again, taking the show that I do with Macy Golder, the Mark and Macy show on Thursday night here on Blab, as a kind of a test case. The original intent was to break it down into 3 shows, to break the analysis of the Mark and Macy show into 3 shows here on BTS Live. Basically, the selection of the host, getting on the same page, preparing to launch, the early stages of getting on the same page in regards to vision and branding and content and direction, and making sure that you're doing as much as you possibly can to eliminate or prevent all the pitfalls of working with somebody, especially if you're not that familiar with that person, as was the case with Macy and I. You're not going to anticipate everything that's going to happen, and we've experienced that, but I think we laid enough groundwork out of the gate that we understood that our mission, our vision, and where we wanted this show to go was so similar that we were very much on the same page and had very few issues. So if you scroll back a couple episodes, maybe 3 or 4 or 5, something in that range, we talked about that. I wanted the second discussion to be about where we stand right now, what we're doing right now to try to broaden the brand and create a better show. And then the third version of the series in regards to the discussion here on BTS Live, talk about okay, where do we take those next steps to get where we eventually want to go? What is the gold standard? What would be the ultimate in regards to if we really have this humming in several months, years, what would we like to be doing? So I think throughout all the discussions and the technical issues, and then other things have happened that we wanted to talk about, I've been a little bit lost on where we are. We're somewhere between episodes 2 and 3.
Absolutely. And before you get into some of the things you're going to talk about today, you raised an interesting point there. I think you kind of talked about the chemistry part of it, and maybe kind of recap a little bit of that. You talked a little bit about that, I think, about the co-host, and that was kind of a big thing, and the whole chemistry thing as far as finding people to work with, and maybe that's the time it takes to develop that, because it's not an instantaneous thing, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to a comment that was made by Colin Cowherd that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Colin Cowherd, if you're not familiar, ESPN, now works at Fox, what I consider to be the gold standard for radio hosts in the sports business out there right now. Just extremely good at what he does in analyzing sports and also making it relatable to real life and everyday life. So he made the comment in transitioning from ESPN and starting a whole new show at Fox that he was discussing. He doesn't necessarily have a co-host, but he's got a kind of a headline girl who reads the headlines, but then they also discuss what's going on. So it's not a strictly co-host situation, but she provides some banter with Colin. And he made the comment in relating it to the cutthroat nature of professional sports these days and cutting loose these coaches after maybe a year, that things take time to marinate, to come together, to get the feel for what, and get everybody on the same page in regards to vision and direction.
Yeah,
and he talked about the chemistry,
right, Mark?
Between
that is really such an important point. Really want to emphasize that I think in today's world it seems like people are kind of looking for the shortcut, and persistent. We talked about this in the past. Persistence and patience really pay off. If you can really work the process.
Yeah, Macy and I talked about this several times in kind of reviewing what he had to say, and we actually had the discussion before. This only validated the discussions we were already having, that we felt good about our comfort level between the two of us. But would that translate? And I think it does to a certain extent, and I think it did right out of the gate to a certain extent. But now watching and reviewing some of our shows, I see where we've come a long way in show 19 versus shows 1 through 5, where I felt very comfortable. But I'm at a point, and we talk about this, where I'm comfortable at this point, regardless of who's on the other side of the camera.
It's funny you mentioned, like, you're up to what show you said, 19 or 20?
19. Yeah.
I mean that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of shows. That's weekly, every week doing it, and it's interesting. You're saying you're just starting to kind of get that chemistry going, and that's literally. And you're an on-cam professional. I mean, I think Macy wants to do, she's a couple years out of college, and I know that's a career goal of hers, and so she's very, very enthusiastic and very driven to make that career goal come true. But you being an on-camera professional, we saw last week some of your earlier work, and even someone like yourself who's very comfortable, that still takes time. And you're on with someone new, and now you're 19 weeks in. Again, that's 4 months, 5 months,
Yeah, so to also credit her background and experience, she graduated a couple years ago out of college, I believe 2014. So she's just about 2 years out of college, but she's had a number of professional experiences with Rutgers football, with arena football. She's been a sideline reporter for arena football. You can actually, she just completed another demo reel if you want to go on Macy Golder on YouTube and check out her latest demo reel. So she's done a lot of sideline reporting, but that's basically been the extent of her experience, has been a number of sideline reporting jobs and putting together what we call packages for presentation after doing interviews at football practices in particular. So her experience is somewhat limited, but still, just after 2 years out of college, she's done quite a bit. And she wants to broaden her experience, because even though there's broadcasting, and then there are different niches of broadcasting. And I even talked several weeks ago about, with the amount of experience I have, the Blab experience in dealing with callers and the social media and engagement aspect even being somewhat new to me, and running into some challenges and just some different situations that were new to me. And so despite the experience I have, it's more from a traditional standpoint, dealing with some new experiences myself.
And I just want to cut in and emphasize that fact. You mentioned Blab, and again, we're simulcasting the Blab, and I think what's great about some of these new platforms that make getting started easy, and I think we talked about this in previous shows, that's one of the roadblocks, is just getting started. People think they need to have everything lined up and perfect, and they always find something else to be concerned about, and they never really get started. And I think that's so important, is that you actually have to get started at some point and get your show off the ground. And then the other thing is, then once you get started, then you want to look to evolve and get better and better and better, and then go from here. I mean, a lot of people I think watch Mark, watch Stephen Haywood, myself, some of the other ones that may have a little bit more advanced setups and this and that, and I don't think you can worry about what we're doing. Certainly it's a goal to get to there. I mean, none of us have started yesterday and just got to this point. It's just evolving slowly but surely. Even in this show, even with the technical issues that we've experienced, just plowing through, finding out what went wrong, improving it. Now we're in show 21, and last week I think we did pretty good once I figured out my Skype settings on the actual preference pane. But this week is really the first week that we were pretty smooth and we got things locked in finally, and it took us 21 weeks, and I consider myself, I think I know what I'm doing, so I mean, it just takes a while, and so, yeah, you mentioned Blab. It's a great platform to develop that cadence with the call-ins, like you said, and practice getting people on and being live, being able to think on your feet and present on your feet, so
I don't want to take everyone too far back because we reviewed a lot of this earlier,
yep.
But just again, so Colin Cowherd made the comment that even with, and think about this, so here's a professional who's working with someone, I don't know what their relationship was from a business standpoint before that, if they had ever worked together or known each other before that, but let's even say that they were meeting for the first time. Okay, they're on the air 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. They go to production meetings. They have a production staff. They have a support staff. I'm sure they're working together anywhere from 5 to 6 to 7 hours a day and have all that support around them. And to compare that to what Macy and I are doing, we get together for roughly an hour once a week. No face-to-face time, no production elements or production staff to work with us, all those things. So to try to make that comparison is ludicrous. So I was just trying to we were both, discussing the challenges, and for as hard as we are on ourselves in regards to our performance on air, cutting ourselves a little bit of slack when that statement's made about two people that are working together professionally with a staff, with writers, 5 to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and on the air for 3 hours per day, comparing that to our 1 hour a week, and that's basically the extent of the time that we have together to work on this, is needs to be taken into context there. So again, starting cold with somebody brand new that I was taking as a recommendation and then launching this show, I'll speed forward to where we stand right now, because we've kind of talked about getting on the same page and talking about the branding and the launch and the content. And just, again, if you're going to partner with somebody on a show, you need to think of everything conceivable that you're going to run into to make sure that you're not hitting that on air and, wow, all of a sudden this person's talking about something or taking the show in a direction I don't want it to go, or allowing certain things out of callers. And that can go in any direction in terms of just think of everything possible. And again, we pretty much did, but we still hit a few things that we needed to work out. and everything was good.
Yeah, especially in live situations, right? You know, you never know what's coming up, and you know, contingency planning and discussion ahead of time goes a long way to remedying that.
So right now, well, our first issue, in a sense, is Blab. So I still don't have last week's show file from Blab. So that's been an issue the last several weeks. It was automatic there for a number of weeks once we started and converted, made that transition, I should say, from Google Hangouts to Blab. You get your show file, your video file, your audio file, you're ready to go. You can upload it to whatever platform you'd like. That's been an issue the last few weeks, and I've had to plead and beg for Blab to cough up the show for some reason. And this week it's not coming and hasn't come. So I've reminded them a number of times on Twitter and on email at the support email address.
And let me just jump in real quick there about Blab, since you mentioned kind of the issues there. You know, it is beta, and I think a lot of people forget that, you know, you're dealing with a beta product, so, you know, proceed with caution. It should not be your only, you know, again, it's easy to start and easy to do your show, but just realize that, you know, like Mark's having, and I think other people have had, you're going to have these issues that crop up. And that's why I think Steven and I have talked about this in previous shows on his network, is that's why we always preach about, you know, evolving, because it is a lot of effort, and it does take some work. But you'll be glad you did if you're really serious about it, because there's other things you could do to mitigate kind of the beta issues that maybe a platform like Blab is experiencing. And again, this is not a dig against Blab. It's just reality as far as trying to build a very complex platform and serve a lot of people. You know, the recording, like you said, Mark, that's an issue, you know, and there are ways to record offline, and that's why we do our show the way we do it. But again, it takes time to get there, and you know, and having that backup or whatever, you know, is so important.
Yeah, and that's going to be the difficult decision to make if things don't clear up, because we initially started on Google Hangouts. That's a platform that I initially used from day one at Mark Rogers TV. It's worked well for me, but it's typically been an interview-type session with a blogger, broadcaster, where I wasn't that concerned about engagement and that interaction with an audience. But the show that we're building, Macy and I, lends itself to engagement, and we both want that. We both want the interaction with an audience, and it's built in on Blab. So we love what we've had with the Blab community and the Blab audience. You know, we were happy to have like 260 views just a couple weeks ago of live views during the show. That was kind of our high water mark, and we were excited about that. Not that we're running on numbers right now, because we're really not looking at them, but still, the interaction just adds something to the show. Google Hangouts, for whatever reason, there's just difficult for people to find you. Even if you solicit on Twitter and Facebook, it's just difficult for people to find you, and it just doesn't have that built-in community. So that's going to be, we're going to have to, if things don't clear up with Blab, make a decision between the community or just the operational aspect of putting together a clean show that we can count on, that's going to be downloaded to us, and we're going to be able to upload on other platforms.
Yeah, the community part is so important. I mean, to me, that's the big draw of a platform like Blab, like Google Hangouts. But I think Blab has surpassed Google Hangouts. You know, it's so hard to discover shows on Hangouts, and you know, especially in the past. And then when Blab first started, you know, I think they did a great job at discovery. They had everything on the home page, and I know they've been kind of experimenting with search and all that. I totally get why they're doing that, and that's always going to be the challenge, is to be able to keep that discovery feature in there, because again, kind of the drive-by, that's kind of the cool thing about Blab, is the drive-bys, the discovery, the new people coming in. Oh, what's this show? What's this about? You know, and having that new audience that may not be familiar with you from other platforms, you know. So yeah, that's a tough call, Mark. I mean, you know, again, Blab is trying to provide a production platform for your show, and again, you don't have all this equipment to do it, so it's a great thing for you. But then again, if you don't have the recording or can't have the stable platform, how do you choose? Do you choose the community? Do you choose stability? I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah, just to make a comparison here, Marty, and you're going to understand this, is that I do an ACC show for football in that conference every Wednesday night, and I have bloggers on there that have thousands and thousands and thousands of Twitter followers. And one particular show, we beat the pavement, and we're on Google Hangouts, or had been for a long time, through about 25 shows, and we beat the pavement on Facebook and Twitter to try to build up a Google Hangouts audience. And this is with a lot of well-established social media people and us really getting the word out there. And we brought in like 35 people. That's the best we could draw in, versus just throwing out a show on Blab. And Macy and I have been consistent with being on Blab for, well, we've done 19 shows, but I'm guessing only maybe the last 7 or 8 have been on Blab, and 250 people find us.
That's right there. That speaks a lot, to Discovery and what Blab has done right, from the very beginning. And that's from my vantage point. I think that's the hardest thing in a lot of these platforms. It's to nail the community part, but it's community part's completely different than the technical part. And I think there's kind of a lack of understanding as far as what Blab is dealing with, as far as the technology they're using, WebRTC, and it's still an evolving technology, and kind of the hoops they have to jump through. And I've heard the CTO for Con discuss this publicly, and I can feel for the guy, because he's trying to discuss this very technical term, and a lot of people don't kind of tune out a little bit about that. But it's an important thing to realize, is that this stuff is hard. It's evolving. It's whenever you're talking about browser-based technologies, Mark, you've run into this. Browsers get updated, and then things get broken, and then things get fixed, and that's where the stability issue comes in. But it's difficult, and that's why. How do you choose? Which way do you go?
The other aspect of this that I really think that we can take advantage of is both of us have done fairly well. I think me, because of my experience and the number of contacts I've had with other platforms, and through my experience in different jobs. For Macy, she's just done a great job on social media of getting out there. So we've started to invite guests onto our show, and that's something I would encourage everyone to do. From the content standpoint, it obviously provides a different voice, a different perspective, just a different personality and vibe to that particular show, regardless of how good the host is, regardless of how good the two co-hosts are. And the base and the core of the show, talking about my show with Macy, is going to be the two of us and how well we interact and the chemistry we build and the audience we pull in. That's going to be the core. But we can do so much more in providing more unique and more versatile content by bringing in guests that provide, again, a different perspective, just that different voice, that different personality, and we've started to do that. So Macy has a tremendous connection with a number of people in the sports world. If you go down her followers list on Twitter, we've already had an NFL player come on from the New York Giants that she knows. I brought in one of the anchors from the SEC network on ESPN, Peter Burns. He was a great guest, and like we talked about in several shows going way back, Marty and I, it's amazing with the social media contacts that you have, people that you would think would just kind of be out of sight, not accessible, that, hey, give it a shot. If you contact 10 and you get 1, if you contact 50 and you get 1, then you've got a credible guest on your show, and that automatically gives you credibility with your audience. And so Pat Muldowney, he's the senior manager of social media at Fox Sports. He came on a few weeks ago. We had a great time with him. We had on Kelly Rippon, who's a news anchor in Nashville. She was on a couple weeks ago, news anchor reporting on and was covering that week the Aaron Andrews trial, and also just a big sports fan, football fan. So we just had a great time with her. And we're building a guest list right now. We just have a number of highly credible and entertaining people to reach out to that, again, the core of the show, the success of the show is going to ride on Macy and I, but it provides just that different feel and that uniqueness to that particular episode of your series.
Yeah, let me interject here about what you're saying about going on social. This all speaks to relationships, right? Well, this stuff doesn't get done in a vacuum. Doesn't get done alone. If you really want to do great things, many times it takes partnerships and teamwork, and developing a core group of people you can work with and trust, and that extends to social media. Social media is great for developing relationships. It extends your physical world really on a global scale, and it's necessarily no different than in real life. It still takes time to develop those relationships, but it enlarges your pool. And just like what Mark is describing here, you're forming these relationships. As Macy's done a great job on social, and once you have those relationships in place, then you could do the ask, as far as people coming on a show. And what's great about that is you can leverage relationships of people that are well known in their field. Like if you're talking about professional players, football players, anybody in sports that your audience is going to love to hear from, because you have that relationship in place. You can bring those people to your audience and share that, and that's really because of all the work you did up front to make that happen.
The other thing that can be done with the content, Marty, as you well know, is, and I've discovered this with my other sports shows. So I do some lengthy shows with the various football conferences right now, the SEC and the ACC. Now, we may have an hour show, and if somebody's really driven to watch SEC football and they love the entirety of it, that's great. Watch our show. But we may talk about 3 specific teams or 3 specific topics or issues within that show that some segment of the audience doesn't care about, or they do care about that one thing, but we didn't hit on that until minute number 46. So we're experiencing that, Macy and I as well. So these shows can be edited down into segments. I've done this specifically with my SEC show, and it's been amazing to see the timing of these discussions within the large discussion of the entire 1 hour show. They're usually like 7 or 8 minutes that will attack a team without planning it out. It seems to just kind of serve like a 7 to 8 minute time window. And I've read a number of places that that's pretty much your sweet spot in terms of a segment time for a particular show. And it's just funny. I probably edited out 20 or 25 segments on my SEC show, and they've almost hit 7 to 9 minutes perfectly every time. And that's something that Macy and I have done with a few of our shows, and thought, okay, we had a really good interview here, but it was 12 minutes into the show. You guys know, we've talked about it on here on BTS Live, that if you don't hook an audience in that first, 10 to 15 seconds, if that, then you're going to lose a lot of people. And maybe you had great content in minute 25, but nobody's going to find it. So look at the entirety of your show and think, can I edit this down and repurpose this content into maybe 3 other shows or 3 other segments that can reach a niche audience? And so that's another thing we've done.
Yeah, I mean, and to add to that, it's really about serving your audience, right? So you have a sports audience. You do, when you first started doing your YouTube videos, you were pretty broad as far as you're a sports fan. You're doing baseball, college football. Your passion is college football, other sports, and you kind of looked at it as, okay, I got to do everything, right? And we talked about kind of niching down to the thing that you really love, and remember we talking about that there is an audience for everything, and I think the value there is really niching down to what you're really passionate about, what you really enjoy talking about, and what you really know. I mean, you're a big baseball fan. We talked about your encyclopedic mind when it comes to baseball, but your passion is really, unless I'm mistaken, is really football, college football. And so you've really, I think, done a nice job niching down to that, and I think you're seeing the rewards of that. You're starting to, reach out. People are starting to reach out to you, getting those partnerships, going on other platforms. Even what you're doing with Mark and Macy, you're getting that chemistry, and also your audience knows what to expect. I think that has a lot to do with it too. I think it's a process of the audience becoming comfortable with you. It's this, like, you're inviting them into your living room. You know, I used to hear this back in the day, you know, when, you know, old network television, oh, you're in the living room with us, you know, whatever. Same thing here, you know. Advance it to present day, it's still that intimate conversation, especially with the social aspect of what we're doing with video. And, you know, people like that familiarity, like to know what to expect. And I think that's something that you guys have done a great job with. And I think you're seeing it in kind of the audience building for that.
Yeah, that's been interesting. I would say for me personally, the NFL, college football, Major League Baseball, those are my three passions. I could have went any direction on that. I think college football lends itself to the fan base being a little bit more rabid than the other two sports, maybe not more committed or larger, but more rabid. And Marty and I, we also talked about this at the time, that it's so cut and dry in the professional sports in regards to determining which teams are in the playoffs and compete for a championship, that college football just lent itself to the debate of who's going to make at the time, the BCS championship game, and now the college football playoffs, that it's just a built-in debate from the start of the season to the end of the season, and even during the off season, whether the pundits and now the National College Football Committee got it right the season before. It's just a built-in, ready-made debate and discussion all the time. So it was a good fit for me from that standpoint. And again, I think the fans are tied to their teams a little bit more emotionally in college football than maybe the other sports or the professional sports.
It's funny. Sports talk, you're absolutely right. It lends itself so well to this type of medium, and very much like politics, you can kind of ignite passions with your talk. And a lot of sports, even though a lot of it is objective, you know, your score is objective, the rules, but a lot of it, including interpretation of the rules, is subjective, including the team you root for and who you think is better and all that, and this whole argument, especially pre-game, post-game, it's all opinion. When the press is picking, you know, the most valuable player, to some degree, it's subjective. You know, when the college basketball tournament committee select the teams to play in the national tournament, they use RPI and different numbers, and it's gotten a lot more over the years, you know, with computer statistics and things like that. But there is still a degree of subjectivity with it, right? And that's what inspires and sparks the debate. And I think it's if you're looking for a topic or a niche to do, you know, creative video shows, sports is great for that, you know, because you always have something to talk about, right? You never run dry.
Yeah, and again, college football even more so than the other sports because of the selection process for the college football playoff being, yes, objective with numbers, but which numbers do you select and how much weight do you put on the numbers? And therefore, it comes down to a subjective opinion and decision made by, what do we have now, 13 people deciding who should play in the college football playoff. Yeah. So, it's just a great discussion and lends itself to that.
Someone in the chat is asking about your Twitter handle. I think is Mark Rogers TV, right, Mark?
Yes, I should be keeping track over here.
No. Alfredo's asking. Walter put it in the chat. Mark, it's actually all one word. Mark Rogers TV is Mark's Twitter handle. So if you want to follow him there,
Alfredo. I was just going to mention 2,000 plus. Who knows what the number is now? I know it's gone over 2,000 college football videos on YouTube. And I do have my site at markrogerstv.com trying to revive. I've actually started to post my videos there again. I laid off for such a long time because it just wasn't presented the way I was satisfied. But I think I'm going to go ahead and start posting there and driving people there. Since I've got the markrogerstv.com and markrogerstv.net wrapped up and will.
It's funny you say that, Mark. I know you're kind of cringing. I'm cringing too because I've been promising people btslive.com will be a full-fledged site, and it's only a landing page, and and I'm not going to bore you with the excuses every week, but just trying to find time with client work and things like that. But that's the plan. That's why I got the domain. But yeah, I mean, that could be a whole show in itself. Is the importance of owning your content. I mean, Stephen Haywood did a show on that. I was a guest on there. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. I forget, but that was the discussion point we brought up, is owning your content. We'll certainly get into that in future week, and why that's important is that could be a whole series of shows, certainly. But you raised some good points there, Mark. And the 2,000 videos, I think that's something that should be emphasized, because again, you've been doing this a long time. A lot of the things that we see in this area, people want that instant results, and you got 2,000 videos under your belt, and you're still plugging away. And that's why we talk about, you have to really love what you do, or else you're not gonna do it long enough to make a difference, right?
Yeah, and we talk about the metrics sometimes, and the metrics for me are positive. They're going in that direction. Now, to make significant money on YouTube, if you just want to be a YouTube star and you see these handful of people out there that have millions of views and are making hundreds of thousands of dollars or more, then it needs to kind of go like that. My numbers have been, I'm not going to consider them in comparison to those people by any stretch. They're not significant. I've got 750 subscribers. But the numbers are headed in the right direction. I'm doubling subscribers every year. I'm increasing 60 to 70% on views each year. I had about, like 3 years ago, I had like 55,000 views for the year. Then I had 106,000, and then last year I had 160,000, and now I'm trending 50-60% higher than that this year. And Marty, you talk about relationships a few minutes ago. That helps in that regard. You partner with somebody or partner with a number of people, and I'm not talking about day-to-day business partnerships, but just from a content standpoint, and you're helping each other out. So
yep.
SB Nation, I'll take that for example, because I've probably got 30 or 35 contacts there. They are all accessible. I've worked with all of them dozens and dozens of times, so I provide them value, or at least they've viewed it that way, as being able to come on and facilitate a conversation. They don't feel either capable or confident enough to shoot their own video and post it on their own site. So I'm pretty much a facilitator, and they post their content with me as a host of sorts, or a facilitator of the conversation, and that helps out my visibility because they posted to a major site. I did one yesterday afternoon, probably right about now, not even 24 hours ago. That thing is posted on the Miami SB Nation site, and it's got 1,000 views in less than a day.
There you go. And that's a great point you bring up, Mark, because it's a two-way street, right? And that's why relationships, partnerships, I think so many times people get way too competitive, way too much, to the point where I think they kind of hurt themselves, really, because, again, if you're doing great things, it's very difficult to do it on your own entirely. It's usually not going to be the case. I mean, when you talk about even, very successful businesses, rarely are they, I don't know any that are solo businesses. They might start out that way, but normally they involve a team of people, and as they grow, you grow the team, because everyone kind of has a job to do in moving that business forward. Same thing in content creation. I look at the chat room here on blab.im, and we simulcast to Blab, and there's a lot of people I recognize in there, and it's a great crew, and part of our audience, and the other thing is we have a relationship with them, Mark and I. And I see people on there chatting it up, and again, we all have each other's backs, right? We all support each other, and we don't do this alone. It's all and the thing is, when we talk about putting these shows together, Mark and I, we're talking about what's going to bring value to our audience, not about hearing ourselves talk. We could do that, but even the discussion we're having today, Mark, you're relating your experience in putting your show together and even just being on YouTube, really the objective here is maybe your experience can help someone else. We're not even saying you have to do it exactly the same way at all, but if you can take a nugget here, a nugget there, and then there are other people that know what, listen, like Stephen Haywood, I'm always going to bring his name up, and but watching his shows, I mean, and he's my inspiration, so you take some things from him and other people in this area. I mean, I don't see it as competitors. Stephen doesn't see it as competitors. I mean, we all work together. We all kind of all the boats can rise at once, and I mean, that's just so important. And just like what you and Macy are doing, and Mark, what you're doing with SB Nation and some of these other sites that you're getting involved with, it's a win-win situation, really, when you think about it, because you're producing, they're getting your content, and you're getting to be able to be in front of their audience. And I mean, it's a great arrangement.
Yeah, and actually the guy that I refer to that I did the video with yesterday is our buddy Cam Underwood, who came on several weeks ago to talk about voice delivery and enunciation and all those things, who leads a nationally renowned choir at the University of Miami, who is very capable of speaking, as you could tell from our episode, Marty. So this is not a guy that can't do it himself, but he still feels as though I would like Mark to produce this video, host it, facilitate the conversation for me to post this on my website. So again, yes, I'm providing the value of the hosting and facilitation. And if I just do a Miami spring football video on my own, first of all, I've got to do all the research that I don't know off the top of my head. Do I know Miami football? Yes, better than 99.99999% of the people on the street. Do I know it as well to the point that I can talk to hardcore Miami football fans? No, I can't. He can. That's what he lives and breathes. So I facilitate the conversation. I provide the hosting, hopefully expertise, and he sees that as value. If I do that, number one, again, I've got to research for hours to come up with what he's got, and I still only have kind of book knowledge. He has the real feel for what's going on. And then number two, I might be sitting here a day later with 25 views, 50 views, whatever. He's got 1,000 views for my product within a day. And so, yeah, provides value for both of us.
Oh, and again, I think you illustrated, there's nothing more for me to add to that. I mean, you illustrated very, very well the value of that, creating those relationships, sharing information. Again, this whole idea that, especially if you're helpful, and you team up with people, everyone can win. I mean, and the other thing I want to also point out there, and I know Stephen Haywood's talked about this in previous shows of his, is this whole idea of competition. And another way to look at it is, especially if you're interested in a particular area. So for me, let's say technology and video production, right? And if I'm a consumer of podcasts or live shows or live streaming video shows, frankly, I'm going to want to listen to multiple people, multiple sources. And they're all talking about the same basic topic. But the difference is everyone brings a little bit different to the table, because there's only one me. There's only one you out there. If you're doing a show, there's only one Mark. And everyone, that's the difference. Everyone can bring their own personal spin, their own unique spin to it. It may be a similar topic, maybe the same topic. But frankly, I listen to multiple I go to multiple blogs. I listen to multiple podcasts about the same subject, because I'm getting something different from everybody. There are different takes. I mean, Mark, we talk a lot about the subjectivity in sports talk, right? And many times, if you're into sports, you're not going to listen to just one person in a sports talk show. You're probably going to listen to a bunch of them. And the reason for that is everyone brings a little something different to the table. So when you're putting together the show with Macy, people still want to see you guys and your take on it, but they're also going to go to maybe 5 other different people for their take on it as well, and I think to kind of put that competition thing on the shelf a little bit, and instead of always competing, look for ways you can find common ground and work together, because again, you're both going to do well, if you're working together.
The one of the reasons I think it works for the two of us, Macy and I, is that I provide more of a nuts and bolts logical, straightforward, objective. We can't all be perfectly objective. There's got to be some feel there, type analysis to it. And she's just got she comes from a completely different direction. We both respect each other's opinion. We disagree quite a bit. We agree. We don't try to manufacture a result like I think you see sometimes on national shows where this person needs to debate this side, this person needs to debate this side, regardless of what they truly feel. So they're not really convicted on the subject, but they're kind of manufacturing a debate. Macy and I mix it up, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree, but we have completely different perspectives. The other thing I'd like to point out is everybody's chiming in with different comments is, so yeah, this is almost like 3 stages of the explanation where we stand on the Mark and Macy show. The original launch, where we stand now, and now I think it's going to go into another episode of talking about where we eventually want to go. But I don't in any way have the book on this. I don't have it written. It's not perfect. So I invite everybody to give me suggestions on how to build this out from here and what to be doing differently, or providing some information or some insight into some platforms or some techniques that I'm not aware of or I'm not executing. So this is not I'm preaching to the world on this is how you build out a show on the internet by any stretch. This is my experience. This is what I've learned. This is what I know from traditional broadcasting, and this is where we stand right now. But I definitely welcome anybody to jump on here and definitely give me some counsel and some advice as well.
And that's well said. I mean, all you can do is relate your own experience, right? And like we mentioned before, I mean, the idea is, I don't expect anybody to take everything I say or Mark says or anybody else says 100% verbatim and do everything exactly as we say. The idea here, and I do the same thing, I listen to a ton of different sources, and bits and pieces will apply to what you're trying to do, and everyone's situation is different. So if you get one thing that's valuable, that's a victory, right? The other thing is, again, it's about kind of evolving. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, where the tagline from that movie is ABC always be closing. It's about salesmen and closing sales, right? Well, I want to change that up. I'll say it's really about ABL, always be learning, right? And if you're always learning, then you're always going to be and to use a sports analogy, moving the ball down the field. You don't score the touchdown immediately. You get better and better as you go. It's a gradual process. But again, if you're ABL, always be learning, then you're always doing something more. I look at our show, the way we launched it, and some of the technical challenges that we faced, and just sitting there and getting a hold of what's going on and learning what's actually happening. We talk a lot about, Stephen Haywood talks about this, knowing your equipment. That's so true. Taking the time, building on your knowledge. It's like going to school, right? You go to school for 12 years through high school. It's not, and hopefully you're smarter than when you first started, and you know more things. Same thing with anything you want to learn. If you're always learning, then you're always going to be moving forward, and that's always a good thing, Mark. I think. So I think this is a good place to stop, because I think this does kind of set up a third show on this, because again, it's a very important topic. Since we do broadcast to Blab as one of our platforms, and a platform that people tend to use to launch shows, to learn about this stuff, I think this is a great topic. We should definitely continue this next week.
It's also a good place to stop, Marty, because I gave you the trials and travails of my cracked tooth last week, so I had the temporary cap put on when I had to leave the show last week, and so now is my 3:10 appointment to go get the permanent crown placed on.
No problem. I'm going to cut you loose. I'm going to do a little housekeeping at the end here. I'm actually, while you're here, I'm actually going to tease. I'm going to, hopefully next week, I'm going to have a little bit of an announcement about what relationships can do, and something I'm going to be involved with on an international scale. I'll leave it at that, just a tease. I don't want to bring it out now because there's some things that have to come together yet, but it has been confirmed that I'll get into it next week. But but I think we'll continue this discussion about relationships, and certainly your discussion about the trials and tribulations of putting your show together. But I'll let you go, Mark, because I'm gonna talk about our Facebook group to let people know where they can kind of continue this discussion going forward for the rest of the week. So, Mark, it's been a great show.
Yeah, so everybody out there that is jumping on for the first time or I'm maybe not familiar with, I see some names out there. Definitely follow me on Twitter at Mark Rogers TV. I will follow you back. We can pick up the discussion there. Thanks for joining us. It's a fun time. And again, I hope we're providing value with our experience, but also want to hear back from you in regards to your thoughts about these topics. So catch you all later. We'll see you next Monday.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. That was wonderful. We'll see you next Monday. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about our groups. If you just want to drop off, you can. Anyways, so guys, thank you very much for tuning in. I do want to remind everyone we do have a Facebook group. And if you search on Facebook, that is facebook.com/groups/BTS Live Show. So search BTS Live Show. I think Walter put it in. He just put it in the comments. Thank you very much, Walter, for doing that. That is the direct link to the group. It's a great group. I invite everyone's welcome, and it's really about this show, and really one of the big purposes of the group is kind of continue that discussion during the week. A lot of great people in there. We just started it. We had a different group, but we kind of had a relaunch a little bit. So this is a fairly new group. Also, we invite people to come in there, and we want to get your show ideas. If there's things you like us to cover in future shows, we want to hear that as well. And also want to remind you that this show is available on btslive.com. It's our landing page. Eventually, it'll be a full site. I have grand visions for this. But right now, you can watch shows not only when we're live, but also during the week. I keep it going 24/7 with reruns of our past recent shows. So usually I'll go back about 4 or 5 shows back and rerun those for folks that weren't able to see those shows live. It's constantly running. We treat it like a television network, really. And so we stream live, and we also are streaming to various platforms: Stream Up, Daily Motion, YouTube, you name it. We stream there. If it's available, we'll go there. And what I'm gonna do is if you guys do want to stick around, I'm gonna hop into the Blab here once we finish the formal show, and I'll stick around and see if anybody has anything else to say. That's kind of the really cool thing about Blab. So we'll do a post show on Blab. But thanks everyone for coming again. Really appreciate it. Mark and myself will be back next week. We will be continuing the discussion, kind of the third part, about Mark's challenges and journey putting together a show, and hopefully it could help you as well. And also, I should have a interesting announcement, me personally, regarding what relationships can do. And again, the hint is it's on an international scale, which is kind of cool. So I'm excited about that. But I'll talk more about that hopefully next week. Until next Monday. This is Marty McPadden. Please join us again next Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern, for another edition of BTS Live. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next week.